Episode 1: The Night of Ashes. The wind tasted like smoke. It clung to my hair, crawled into my lungs, and stung my eyes until every blink burned. I kept walking, my boots crunching over shards of glass scattered across the main street of Silverfong territory. Behind me, the hall where I had been raised, the Alpha's hall, my father's legacy, was nothing but a roaring pyre. I didn't look back. If I did, I might see the ghosts of my past standing in the flames, reminding me of who I used to be. Lyra Blackthorn, daughter of Alpha Thane, heir to the Silverfong throne. Now, I was nothing. A rogue. A traitor. A whore, at least that's what they called me as they ripped my crest from my neck and threw it into the fire. And all because of him. I shifted my grip on the bundle in my arms. A small, fragile weight stirred against my chest, making a soft sound that was neither cry nor sigh. My son. My only truth left in a world that had already decided I didn't deserve him. Kale's son. The Alpha of Bloodfong. My sworn enemy. My fated mate. The trial had been quick. They didn't call it that, of course. Alphas never like to admit they acted like the very tyrants they swore to protect their packs from. But I had stood in the center of the council chamber, with every eye in the room fixed on me, and I had been judged before a single word left my mouth. You will confess. My father's voice had been cold, stripped of anything that might sound like love. You will name him, and you will end this disgrace before it spreads. I had kept my chin high, my hands curled protectively over my swollen belly. The child is mine. That is all you need to know. His gaze had cut into me like a blade. And the father? I'd hesitated. That was my mistake. A murmur ran through the room, low and sharp as the scent of fear. Someone had already guessed. I could smell the anticipation, the hunger for scandal. Alpha Kale of Bloodfong. My cousin's voice rang out, eager to be the one who delivered the killing blow. The enemy who slaughtered 30 of our warriors last winter. The chamber erupted. Words like traitor, spy, whore tangled with the growl of half-shifted wolves. My father didn't roar for silence. He didn't need to. His decision had been made long before this moment. You are no daughter of mine, he had said. And with those words, my future burned to ash. The cold night wrapped around me as I crossed the border stones. The moment my boot hit the dirt beyond them, the bond to my pack severed. It was like losing a limb, a breath, a heartbeat. I staggered, clutching my son tighter. He whimpered, a tiny fist escaping the blanket. I whispered, though my own voice was shaking. I've got you. They can't take you from me. Somewhere in the trees, an owl cried. Farther away, a wolf howled, a sound I knew too well. Not Silverfong. Not my pack. Bloodfong. I froze. The figure stepped from the darkness as if it belonged there. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of presence that stole the air before a word was spoken. The moonlight caught on the scar that cut across his jaw, a pale slash against his tanned skin. Kale. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. The bond between us hummed like a live wire, treacherous and undeniable. My wolf surged, aching to close the space between us, but I held my ground. You've been busy. His voice was low, dangerous, and far too familiar. That child, he's mine. I tightened my arms around my son. No, he's mine, and you will never touch him. A flicker of something, hurt? Rage, crossed his face before it hardened again. You think you can run from me, Lyra? From what we are. What we are, I spat, is enemies. His eyes darkened, gold bleeding into the brown. Not for long. Branches snapped somewhere behind him, and Kale's head turned sharply. More shadows moved in the tree-lean, Bloodfong warriors. My breath caught. I was trapped between the territory that had cast me out and the Alpha who claimed my son. The night was silent for a heartbeat. Then Kale took a step forward. Come with me, he said, his voice suddenly softer, almost pleading. Before they make this worse. I shook my head. You made it worse the moment you denied us. The bond between us pulsed once, hard enough to steal my breath. My wolf howled inside me, torn between fight and surrender. Then a single arrow cut through the air, burying itself in the dirt between us. Episode 2, Shadows of Bloodfong. The arrow quivered in the dirt, the shaft humming with the force of the shot. My breath locked in my chest. My first instinct was to run, but there was nowhere to go. Silverfang's border lay behind me, sealed and poisoned with betrayal. Ahead, the forest belonged to Bloodfang and to him. Kale's head snapped toward the shadows, his voice sharp with command. "Hold your fire." The reply was silence, heavy and defiant. Another figure stepped into view between the trees. A man broad as an oak, with eyes like flint and the unmistakable scent of Bloodfang Beta. His bow was already drawn, the tip of his arrow resting against the string. "You're off territory, Alpha," the Beta said, though his gaze kept darting toward me and the bundle in my arms. "She's carrying." "I know what she's carrying," Kale cut in, his tone edged with something dangerous. "Lower your weapon." The Beta hesitated. I could feel the tension threading through the night like a wire about to snap. The baby stirred against my chest, sensing my fear, and I tightened my hold. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, forcing my voice steady despite the tremor running through me. "Neither of you." Kale took a step closer, his shadow spilling over the pale dirt. "You think Silverfang will take you back? You're rogue now, Lara. No pack, no protection. Out here, that's a death sentence. Better than belonging to you." His jaw tightened, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might lunge for me. Instead, he closed the distance slowly, deliberately, as though approaching a skittish animal. "You have no idea what you're walking into. There are rogues in these woods who'd sell their own blood for a chance at an alpha's pup. You won't last the night. Then I'll fight." The Beta let out a humorless laugh. "With what?" "Harsh words." He lifted his bow again. I shifted my stance, turning so my body shielded the baby entirely. My wolf pressed against my skin, ready to break free, but shifting with him in my arms was impossible. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might shatter my ribs. Kale's voice came again, low but firm. "Lower it, Yarok." "Now." The Beta gritted his teeth but obeyed, lowering the bow. The tension eased just enough for me to breathe again. "We're leaving," Kale said. "All of us." "No," I said. His eyes locked onto mine. "You don't have a choice." He moved faster than I could react. One moment he was standing a few feet away, the next he was in front of me, his scent overwhelming, his presence filling every inch of the space between us. His hand closed around my upper arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to remind me of the strength coiled under his skin. The bond flared at his touch, a sudden heat that rolled through me like wildfire. My wolf stirred, recognizing him, craving him. I shoved this sensation down hard. "Let me go," I hissed. "You'd rather die out here than let me help you?" His voice was quieter now, but the intensity behind it was like the edge of a blade. "Is your pride worth the boy's life?" I faltered. "The boy. My son. My entire world." His tiny breath warmed against my collarbone. The thought of him in danger was a weight I couldn't carry. "You denied him," I said, my voice breaking despite my best effort. "You denied us both." Something flickered in Kale's gaze. Regret, maybe, but too brief to trust. I was wrong. The words hung between us, impossible and heavy. My throat tightened. He didn't wait for me to answer. Instead, he turned to Yarok. "Clear the way," Kale ordered. We moved to the ridge. "No one follows us." Jarek's expression soured, but he gave a short nod and slipped back into the trees. Kale's grip on me loosened, though he didn't step away. "Lyra," he said softer now, "you're not safe. Come with me, at least until the sun rises." I searched his face for some sign of a trap. All I found was the same stubborn certainty I'd once thought was strength. The same certainty that had led to my ruin. But the forest beyond was dark, and somewhere in it, a wolf howled. Not a warning, but a promise. "Fine," I said finally. "One night." His shoulders eased, just slightly. "One night," he agreed. We moved through the forest in silence, Kale leading and Yarok shadowing us at a distance. The air grew colder, the moon slipping between branches like a watchful eye. I kept my son pressed close, counting each of his breaths to keep my own steady. After an hour, we reached a ridge overlooking a deep valley. Smoke curled from a hidden camp below, the glow of fires barely visible through the trees. Kale stopped, scanning the area before turning to me. "This is as far as we go tonight," he said. "There's a cave just ahead. We'll be sheltered until morning." I hesitated. And then, his gaze held mine, unflinching. "Then we talk." The cave was small but dry, the stone warmed by the day's heat. I settled on the farthest side, putting the wall at my back. Kale stayed near the entrance, a silent sentinel. For a long while, the only sounds were the crackle of the small fire he'd built and the steady rhythm of my son's breathing. "Why now?" I asked finally. "After everything, why find us now?" Kale didn't look at me at first. His eyes stayed fixed on the dark beyond the cave. "Because I didn't know." I frowned. "Didn't know what?" His gaze shifted, locking onto mine. "That night, I thought it was a dream. I thought you were a dream. And when I woke, you were gone." My chest tightened. "You're lying." He shook his head. If I'd known, if I'd believed. He cut himself off, the muscle in his jaw flexing. "I would never have let you go." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to hate him more. Both once burned in me until I didn't know which was which. Somewhere deep in the forest, a wolf's howl split the night. Kale's head snapped toward the sound, his hand already reaching for the blade at his hip. "They found us," he said. Episode 3, Hunt in the Moonlight. The howl cut through the night like a blade, low and long, echoing off the ridges. It wasn't the call of a lone wolf. It was a signal. A warning to some, a summons to others. Kale rose in one fluid motion, his shadow stretching high against the cave wall. "Stay here," he ordered. "No," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You think I'm going to sit in the dark while whatever that is comes for us?" His gaze locked on mine, fierce and unblinking. "You have the boy. You stay." But I was already on my feet, keeping my son pressed against my chest. "I've been on my own for years, Kale. I know what danger sounds like." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he moved to the cave mouth, scanning the forest. "They're rogues," he murmured. "Two, I know, 3 of them. Downwind." The hairs on my arms rose. I could smell them now, unwashed fur, iron, and something rancid that turned my stomach. Yarok appeared out of the darkness, his face grim. "They're circling." Kale glanced back at me. "We move. Now." There was no time to pack, no time to think. We slipped into the trees, the ground soft underfoot, muffling our steps. My son stirred in his sleep, and I held him tighter, praying he wouldn't cry. The first growl came from the left. Low, guttural close. Kale stopped dead, one hand raised for silence. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then a shape lunged from the undergrowth, a massive wolf, its fur patchy, eyes yellow with the madness that came from living too long without a pack. Its jaws gaped wide, teeth flashing. Kale met it head-on. The sound of the impact, bone against bone, muscle against muscle, rattled through me. He didn't shift, not fully, but his claws lengthened, his canines glinted in the moonlight. He moved like water, fluid and lethal. Another wolf burst through the brush behind me. Yarok slammed into it, both of them tumbling into the dirt. I stumbled back, my heel catching on a root. My son whimpered. The third wolf came from the front. I had no weapon, only my wolf. I shifted just enough for claws to rip through my fingertips, the sensation sharp and familiar. My heart pounded as I slashed at the rogue's muzzle, drawing a yelp and a spray of hot blood. Kale's fight ended in seconds. The rogue beneath him went still, its eyes glazing over. He turned toward me, just as the one I'd struck lunged again. His hand shot out, catching it by the throat, lifting it clear off the ground. "Go," he snarled at me, his voice edged with something primal. "Run to the ridge." Now. I hesitated. I didn't want to leave him, but the weight of my son in my arms made the decision for me. I turned and ran, every instinct screaming to move faster. The forest blurred around me, dark trunks, pale moonlight, the rush of wind in my ears. Behind me, the sounds of the fight followed, the thud of bodies, the crack of branches, the wet, terrible sound of teeth meeting flesh. I broke through the trees onto the ridge, my chest heaving. The valley below lay quiet, too quiet. My wolf strained to listen, to find Kale's heartbeat, but the night swallowed everything. Then footsteps. Heavy. Approaching. I spun, claws ready, only to see Kale emerging from the shadows. Blood streaked his jaw, his shirt torn. His eyes locked on me, scanning for injury before dropping to my son. "You're both alive," he said, as if he doubted it for a moment. Yerrick followed, limping, one arm wrapped tight around his ribs. "We can't stay here. If 3 found us, more will come." Kale nodded once. "We moved to Bloodfang territory." I stiffened. "Absolutely not. You think Silverfang will take you now? You think rogues will stop hunting you? My land is the only place they won't touch you." "Your land is a prison," I shot back. "It's the only prison where your son will wake up tomorrow," he said, voice low, dangerous. "You can hate me there, but you can't keep him alive out here." I opened my mouth to argue, but the truth in his words settled like a stone in my gut. The rogue's howls still echoed in my bones. My son's tiny hand curled against my skin, and I knew I couldn't risk it. "Fine," I said at last. "One night." Kale's mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close enough to make my wolf stir uneasily. "One night," he agreed. But deep down, I knew it was a lie. Episode 4, Bloodfang's Gates. The border was marked by 2 massive stones, each carved with the crest of Bloodfang, a wolf's head crowned with jagged lines like lightning. Moonlight painted the symbols silver, and the air felt heavier here, as if crossing into this land would press a weight onto my shoulders I could never shake off. Kale stepped across first, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged. Yerrick followed, still limping but silent. I stood on the Silverfang side, my feet rooted in the dirt, my son sleeping in the crook of my arm. "Lyra," Kale said without turning. "If you're coming, do it now. The patrols won't wait forever." Patrols. I scanned the shadows and found them. 2 pairs of eyes glinting between the trees, low to the ground, moving with the smooth, predatory grace of wolves. They were watching us, waiting for Kale's signal. I stepped forward. The moment my foot crossed the invisible line between the stones, the air changed. It was warmer, but thicker, carrying scents I didn't recognize. Pine, blood, and the faint metallic tang of iron. Kale gave a short nod and led us deeper into the forest. The patrol wolves melted back into the shadows without a sound. We walked for hours, following a path that wound through towering pines and thick undergrowth. The moon climbed higher, spilling silver over Kale's broad shoulders. My arms ached from holding my son, but I didn't complain. Finally, the trees broke, revealing a sprawling fortress of stone and timber. High walls encircled it, topped with sharp wooden stakes. Torches burned along the ramparts, their flames flickering in the wind. Bloodfang's stronghold. 2 guards in human form stepped forward as we approached. Both were large, their eyes hard and assessing. One bowed his head slightly. "Alpha." Kale's tone was clipped. "Open the gate." Their gazes slid to me. I could feel their questions in the weight of their stares. Who is she? Why is she with him? What is she carrying? But they said nothing. One turned and signaled, and the heavy wooden gates creaked open. The sound was like a heartbeat in my ears. Once I crossed, I would be inside. Inside his world. Inside his power. I hesitated. Kale looked back at me, one brow arched. "You're not a prisoner, Lyra. You can leave any time." We both knew that was a lie. Inside the walls, the fortress was alive. Wolves in both forms moved through the courtyards, carrying crates, sharpening weapons, talking in low voices. The scent of roasting meat drifted through the air, mingling with the sharper tang of oiled steel. Kale led us across the main yard to a wide set of stone steps that climbed to a long hall. The doors were carved with more lightning-crowned wolves, and when they swung open, warmth and light spilled into the night. The hall was crowded. Warriors, advisors, and servants alike turned to look as we entered. Whispers rippled through the room, like the rustle of wind through dry leaves. I felt their stares settle on me, heavy with curiosity, suspicion, and something else, something darker. At the far end of the hall, a long table stood on a raised platform. Kale climbed the steps and turned to face the room. "This is Lyra Blackthorn," he said, his voice carrying easily over the noise. "She is under my protection." The room went still. A man near the front, a tall, thin advisor with a hawk-like face, spoke first. "A Silverfall? Here." His eyes flicked to my son, and his lip curled. "With a pup." Kale's gaze hardened. "My pup." A murmur swept through the hall. I gripped my son tighter, my pulse pounding. Kale descended the steps and guided me toward a side door, ignoring the stares and the whispers. We emerged into a quieter corridor lined with heavy wooden doors. Kale stopped at one and pushed it open, revealing a room lit by a single oil lamp. A fire crackled in the hearth, and a bed large enough to fit 3 people sat against the far wall. "You'll stay here," he said. I stepped inside, scanning the space. It was warm, clean, and far more comfortable than the places I'd slept in the past few years. Still, I kept my back to the wall. "And what do you expect me to do?" "Be grateful." He closed the door behind him, leaning against it. "I expect you to stay alive." The way he said it, like it was a challenge, like he knew how hard that would be here, sent a chill through me. "Why bring me here?" I asked. "Why not let me go, if you're so sure you're not my enemy?" His eyes darkened. "Because you are mine. And he is mine." He nodded toward my son. "And I don't share what's mine." The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks into the air. I met his gaze, refusing to look away. "You don't own me, Kale. You never will." His mouth curved, slow and dangerous. "We'll see." Before I could answer, a knock sounded at the door. Kale opened it to reveal a young warrior, his expression tense. "Alpha," the warrior said. "The council requests your presence. There's been an incident at the northern border." Kale's jaw tightened. "Tell them I'm coming." He glanced back at me. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but me." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in a fortress full of strangers. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my son's steady breathing the only sound in the room. Outside, the wind howled against the stone walls, carrying with it the distant scent of smoke. Something was coming. And it wasn't just Kale I had to fear. Episode 5: Teeth Behind Smiles. The fire's warmth faded faster than I expected. Maybe it was the draft slipping under the heavy door, or maybe it was the way the walls seemed to lean in, reminding me that I was surrounded by strangers. I laid my son in the center of the bed, tucking the blanket around him, so tight only the top of his tiny head showed. His breathing was steady, soft. I envied his peace. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Slow. Deliberate. They stopped right outside my door. A sharp knock followed, not the same rhythm Kale had used earlier. I stayed still, my hand hovering over the knife hidden in my boot. "Lyra Blackthorn," a woman's voice called, smooth as silk but carrying an edge that pricked at my skin. "You don't know me, but I think we should talk." I didn't answer. The voice came again, softer now. "You're alone in there. That can't be comfortable, not in this place. Open the door, and maybe we can help each other." Every instinct told me to ignore her, but the thought of someone standing out there, waiting, was worse. I moved to the door, keeping the knife in my right hand, and cracked it open just enough to see her. She was tall, with hair the color of polished copper, and eyes a green so bright they almost glowed. She wore a fitted black tunic lined with silver thread, a warrior's cut, but too fine to belong to a common soldier. "Who are you?" I asked. "Celine," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Beta's sister. Which means I'm family to the man who'll decide whether you and your pup survive here." "I thought Kale made that decision," I said. Her smile widened. "Kale makes many decisions. The council makes the rest. And they don't like surprises, especially Silverfang ones." I started to close the door, but she pressed a hand against it. "Word travels fast in this fortress. They're already asking why Kale brought you here, why he claimed the pup as his. Some of them think you're a spy." "I'm not." "That's not the point," she said, her tone turning sharp. "The point is, if they decide you are, nothing Kale says will save you." I tightened my grip on the knife. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," she said, leaning closer, "you might need allies. And I might enjoy watching Kale squirm." Before I could respond, Footsteps sounded again, heavier this time. Celine stepped back as Yarok rounded the corner, his gaze flicking between us. "What are you doing here?" he asked her. "Welcoming our guest," she said sweetly. "Is that a problem?" Jarek's jaw worked, but he didn't answer her directly. Instead, he looked at me. "Close the door." "Now." I did. Through the wood, I heard their voices, low but tense. Then silence, followed by Jarek's knock. "She's trouble," he said when I opened the door. "Don't talk to her unless you have to." "I can take care of myself," I replied. "Not here you can't," he said, his tone flat. "This place eats outsiders alive, even ones Kale favors." He left before I could ask more. I sat back on the bed, my mind turning over Celine's words. Allies. Enemies. Council. I'd been here less than a night, and already the walls felt less like protection and more like a trap. My son stirred, a soft whimper escaping his lips. I smoothed a hand over his hair until he settled again. Somewhere deep in the fortress, a horn sounded, low, resonant, and urgent. The sound carried through the stone, vibrating in my bones. I crossed to the narrow window, pushing aside the heavy curtain. Torches flared in the courtyard below, warriors rushing toward the gates. I caught a glimpse of Kale among them, his head tilted toward a scout who'd just arrived. The scout's words didn't reach me, but the look on Kale's face did. Hard. Grim. Focused. Something had happened at the border. Again. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just caught in Kale's orbit. I was standing in the middle of whatever war he was fighting, whether I wanted to be or not. Episode 6, The Border Bleeds. The horn's echo still thrummed in my chest when the door burst open. Kale filled the frame, his scent sharp with adrenaline and cold night air. "Get your things," he said. I glanced at the bed, at my son still sleeping under the heavy blanket. "What's happening?" "Rogue attack. Northern watch post," he said, already crossing the room. "They've pushed farther in than they should have been able to. Someone opened the gates for them." I froze. "You think it was one of yours?" He met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't before, a flicker of doubt. "I think this is exactly the kind of thing the council will blame on a convenient outsider." It took a heartbeat for his meaning to sink in. "Me. Unless I keep you where they can't touch you," he said, lifting my son into his arms with a care that didn't match the urgency in his voice. "We're moving to the inner keep." I followed him through the corridors, the fortress alive with motion. Warriors sprinted past us, their boots hammering the stone, weapons in hand. The air smelled of oiled steel and wolf musk, layered with the faint copper tang of blood carried in on the wind. We reached a narrow stair that wound upward into the heart of the stronghold. At the top, a smaller hall opened into a chamber ringed with thick walls and barred windows. It was warmer here, quieter, but the tension still clung like smoke. Kale set my son down in a crib near the fire. How long had that been waiting here? Then turned to me. "Stay in this room. Don't answer the door. Don't talk to anyone until I come back." "What if you don't?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. His gaze softened for a fraction of a second. "Then you run. As far as you can." And then he was gone. I paced the room, every creak of the floorboards making my nerves prickle. The minutes stretched into hours. Outside, the night deepened, the wind carrying faint shouts from the courtyard. I didn't plan to disobey him. But when the door handle rattled and a voice hissed my name, my wolf stirred. "Lyra," the voice whispered. It wasn't Kale's. I pressed my ear to the wood. "Who is it?" "Yarok." "Open up." Quietly. I unlatched the door just enough for him to slip inside. His face was pale under the lamplight, a shallow cut running from his temple to his jaw. "You need to come with me," he said. "Now." "What happened?" "The council's meeting without Kale. They're saying you lured the rogues in. That you're here to spy for Silverfang." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "That's a lie." "Doesn't matter," he said. "If they decide it's true, they'll act before Kale gets back." I looked at my son, asleep and oblivious. "I'm not leaving him." "Then bring him," Yarok said, glancing toward the crib. "But we have to move now." I didn't trust him. Not fully, but the urgency in his voice left no room for hesitation. I scooped my son into my arms, wrapping the blanket tight, and followed Yerek into the hall. We took a different path this time, through narrow service corridors that smelled of damp stone and old wood. My pulse hammered in my ears, each step echoing too loud in the dark. At a side door, Yerek paused. From here, we go through the lower yard. Once we're past the stables, there's a gate the patrols rarely use. He didn't finish. The door slammed open, and Celine stood there, flanked by 2 warriors. Her smile was slow, deliberate. Going somewhere? She asked. Yerek shifted, putting himself between me and her. This isn't your business, Celine. Oh, but it is, she said, her eyes sliding to me. The council wants her. You can either hand her over, or you can explain to Kale why you interfered. The 2 warriors moved forward. My wolf rose inside me, claws itching under my skin. I didn't know if Celine was bluffing or not, but I knew one thing. If they took me now, I wouldn't see my son again. Back off, I said, my voice low, dangerous. Celine tilted her head. Or what? I didn't answer. I shifted my weight, feeling the familiar surge of my wolf's strength, ready to tear through anyone who tried to take him from me. And that's when the horn sounded again. Short, sharp, urgent. Kale's signal. Celine's smile faltered. She looked at the warriors. Bring her. But before they could move, Kale's voice thundered down the corridor. Try it and you'll lose your hands. Episode 7, The Alpha's Claim. Kale's voice hit like a crack of thunder, freezing everyone where they stood. Celine's warriors stiffened, their hands twitching toward their weapons before instinct, or survival, made them stop. He strode down the corridor, the torchlight catching on the sharp angles of his face. His eyes were molten gold, the kind of color that meant his wolf was close to the surface. Step away from her, he said, low but carrying enough force to make even stone want to obey. Celine didn't move. The council sent for her. They don't send for anyone without my consent, he replied. And they don't get to decide the fate of my Luna without speaking to me first. The word hit me like a blow. Luna. My pulse stumbled, my grip tightening on my son. He said it so easily, as if it were fact, as if the last years hadn't happened. Celine's lips curled in something that wasn't quite a smile. You've never named her that before. I'm naming her now, Kale said. Her gaze flicked between us, calculating. Convenient, given the council's questions. Kale stepped closer until the air between them bristled with unspoken challenge. Do you want to keep testing me, Celine? Because I promise you'll lose. Her eyes narrowed, but she gestured for her warriors to step back. This isn't over. The council will meet with or without you, Alpha. Let them, Kale said. And let them remember who keeps their borders from burning. She brushed past him, her scent sharp with irritation. The 2 warriors followed, their footsteps fading into the dark. Kale turned to Yerek. What the hell were you thinking, moving her without telling me? She wasn't safe in the inner keep, Yerek said. They were already on their way to take her. I did what I had to. Kale's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he looked at me. Are you hurt? No, my voice came out steadier than I felt. But if you're going to keep calling me your Luna just to win arguments, don't bother. His gaze sharpened. That's not why I said it. Then why? Because it's true, he said, the words rough, as if pulled from somewhere deep. It was true the first time I saw you. It's true now. And the council needs to understand that anyone who comes for you comes for me. I wanted to tell him it wasn't enough, that a word didn't erase the years of silence and denial. But the way his eyes held mine made the words catch in my throat. Yerek shifted uncomfortably. We should move. If Celine's right, the council's meeting without you, and that's never good. Kale gave a curt nod. Take her to my quarters. No one gets near without my order. I can walk myself, I said. This isn't about walking, Kale replied. It's about making sure everyone sees you there. I followed Yerek through the fortress, my son warm and heavy in my arms. Whispers followed us like a shadow. By the time we reached Kale's quarters, a large room overlooking the central courtyard, I could feel the weight of 100 eyes on my back. Yerek stood at the door as I stepped inside. Lock it from the inside, he said. And keep it that way until Kale returns. When the door closed, I set my son down on the bed and crossed to the window. Below, The courtyard was lit by torches, a swirl of movement as warriors came and went. Beyond the gates, the forest was a wall of black, hiding whatever danger had stirred the borders tonight. The door opened again, and Kale entered. He didn't speak at first, just crossed the room to stand beside me at the window. "They'll push," he said finally. "They always do." But tonight reminded them where the lines are. "By calling me your Luna," I said. "By making sure they know you're untouchable." I turned to face him. "That only works if I actually am." His hand lifted, almost touching my cheek before he stopped himself. "You are, Lyra. As long as you're here, no one lays a hand on you or the boy. And if I decide not to stay here," a shadow crossed his face, "then I protect you from the outside. But it's harder. And I'd rather not let you out of my sight." The words should have sounded possessive, threatening. Instead, they were quieter, almost raw. I didn't answer. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the distant sound of another horn. Different this time, longer, deeper. Kale's expression hardened. "That's not from the border. That's from inside the fortress." Before I could ask, the pounding of feet came in the hall, and a voice shouted from the other side of the door. "Alpha, the council chamber's been breached." Episode 8: Blood in the Council. Kale was already moving before the voice outside had finished speaking. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, yanking the door open. The guard who'd brought the message stood there, chest heaving, the whites of his eyes stark against his dark skin. "They came through the side passage," the guard said. "Someone left the gates to the council chamber unlocked. Half the council's in there now, half scattered. There's fighting in the halls." Kale's shoulders squared, his wolf rising just beneath his skin. "Get every warrior on that wing. No one leaves the fortress." The guard ran off. Kale turned to me. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." "You said that before," I reminded him, and it didn't stop Celine. Something flickered across his face, a muscle tightening in his jaw. "Then you stay away from the door entirely." I glanced at my son, sleeping on the bed, oblivious to the danger thickening around us. "And if they come here?" "They won't," he said, but there was no certainty in it. He was already reaching for the sword strapped across his back. "I'll end this before it gets that far." And then he was gone again, the heavy door slamming behind him. The room felt smaller without him, the shadows heavier. I crossed to the bed, running my fingers through my son's hair. His warmth grounded me, but it also burned with the thought of what could happen if Kale failed. Outside, the fortress was a storm. Boots pounded over stone. Shouts rose and fell, punctuated by the clash of steel and the guttural snarls of half-shifted wolves. The air was sharp with the scent of blood, and it was getting closer. I heard voices in the hall, 2 men, low and hurried. "She's in Kale's quarters," one said. "And the pup. With her. If we take them." The rest of his words were swallowed by a snarl, low and menacing. My wolf surged at the sound, recognizing the threat in it. I grabbed the knife from my boot and positioned myself between the door and the bed. The handle rattled once, twice. Then the first blow hit. The wood shuddered, the lock straining. I didn't think. I moved. Knife in one hand, my son in the other, I darted to the window. It was narrow but not barred. I shoved it open, the cold night air rushing in. Below was a drop to the inner courtyard, lit by the flare of torches. A shadow loomed behind me. I turned in time to see the door splinter, the top hinge tearing free. A man stepped through, wolf eyes gleaming, teeth bared. I shifted. Not fully, but enough to feel claws tear through my fingertips, my muscles tightening, my senses sharpening. He lunged, and I slashed across his arm, forcing him back a step. But another man was behind him, bigger, faster. I couldn't fight them both while holding my son. My wolf screamed for me to run, and I listened. I leapt for the window, twisting to shield the baby as we fell. We hit hard on the packed dirt of the courtyard, my knees screaming from the impact. I rolled, clutching him tight, then scrambled to my feet. The courtyard was chaos. Warriors clashed in the torchlight, steel and fur and blood. The air rang with the sounds of battle and the cries of the wounded. I searched for Kale, but there was no sign of him. Lyra. The voice came from my left. Yarok, blood running down his temple, a sword in hand. He cut through 2 rogues, his blade a blur, then grabbed my arm. This way. We ran along the wall, dodging between fighting pairs, my wolf alert for any movement too close. At the far end of the courtyard, a side door gaped open, its hinges twisted. We ducked inside, into a narrow passage that smelled of damp and stone. Where are we going? I asked, breathless. Somewhere they can't follow, Yarok said. An old storage hall under the council wing. Only a few of us know it exists. We reached a heavy iron door at the end of the passage. Yarok shoved it open, motioning me inside. The room beyond was dark, lit only by a single oil lamp. I stepped in and froze. Celine was waiting, her green eyes gleaming in the low light. 2 more men stood with her, both armed. I was wondering when you'd get here, she said. Kale's too busy playing hero to protect you now. Jarek's grip tightened on my arm. Celine, this isn't. She cut him off. Hand her over, Yarok. Or I'll assume you're with her. The men moved closer. I shifted my son to one arm, my knife still in my other hand. My wolf's growl rolled through me, low and steady. I'm not going anywhere with you, I said. Celine smiled, slow and sharp. You think you have a choice? Before I could answer, a roar shook the walls, deep enough to rattle the lamp on the table. Kale's roar. Celine's smile faltered. The next moment, the iron door behind us slammed shut, and Kale was there, blood on his sword, his eyes blazing gold. Step away from my Luna, he said. Episode 9, The Alpha's Warning. Kale's voice filled the room like a second heartbeat, steady but edged with the kind of fury that made the air feel heavier. Celine didn't step back. Her chin lifted, her green eyes glinting under the flicker of the oil lamp. You're too late, Kale. The council has already decided she's a danger to this pack. They don't decide without me, he said, his tone a quiet blade. And you know it. Her smile was sharp and cold. The council doesn't trust you anymore. Not since you've been distracted. Her gaze flicked to me, and the implication in that single glance made my skin prickle. Kale moved forward, slow and deliberate, like a predator closing the last few steps before the kill. Careful, Celine. You're about to say something you can't take back. The 2 men at her side shifted uneasily, but she didn't flinch. It's not me you need to be careful with, Alpha. It's them. She nodded toward the door, toward the fortress beyond, and the ones who've been waiting for you to make a mistake. I haven't made one yet, Kale said. Celine's gaze slid to my son in my arms. Bringing her here was your first. My wolf rose at her tone, my fingers tightening protectively around him. You think a child is a threat? I asked. I think the pup is leverage, she said. And when the wrong hands get hold of leverage, packs burn. Kale's golden eyes flared brighter, his wolf close enough that the scent of him thickened in the air. If you're suggesting you're one of those wrong hands. I'm suggesting nothing, she interrupted smoothly. But I will tell you this, the northern attack wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Her words sank like a stone in the silence. Kale's expression didn't change, but I could see the way his shoulders stiffened, the way his hand tightened on the sword hilt. What do you know? Celine tilted her head. More than you'll hear in the council chamber. And more than she will survive if you keep her here. I'm not leaving, I said before I could stop myself. Celine's attention snapped to me, her smile turning thin. You think you have a choice because Kale's standing here. But when the one's truly pulling the strings decide you're a liability, even he won't be able to stop it. Kale took another step forward. The 2 men moved instinctively, hands going to their weapons. But one look from him froze them in place. This is your only warning, he said to Celine, his voice low and absolute. Stay away from her. Stay away from the boy. If I find you anywhere near them again, I won't care who your brother is. For a moment, the tension in the room was a living thing, pressing against my skin, crowding the air from my lungs. Then Celine smiled again, but this time it was brittle around the edges. Enjoy your little victory, Alpha. It won't last. She signaled to her men, and they backed toward the far door. Before slipping out, she glanced over her shoulder at me. You'd be wise to take your pup and run before the walls fall in. The door closed behind them with a heavy thud. Kale let out a slow breath, then turned to me. Are you hurt? No, I said. But I think she wanted you to see her tonight. Wanted you to hear that. He nodded once, his eyes still on the door. She wanted me to know she's not alone in whatever she's planning. And the northern attack? His jaw tightened. If she's telling the truth, it wasn't just rogues testing the border. It was someone sending a message. I shifted my son in my arms, feeling the warmth of him against me. To you. To all of us, Kale said. His gaze met mine, steady and fierce. Which means you and the boy don't leave my sight again. I should have argued. Should have told him I could take care of myself, that I didn't need an alpha's shadow hanging over me. But the truth was still fresh in my mind. Two men breaking down a door, Celine's green eyes sharp in the dark, the sound of Kale's roar cutting through it all. Fine, I said at last. Something eased in his shoulders, just slightly. Good. Then we start at dawn. Start what? Finding out who's trying to burn my pack from the inside, he said. And making sure they don't live long enough to try again. Episode 10 Dawn's Pact. The first light of dawn slid through the high windows, pale and cold, catching on the edges of the stone walls. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Celine's face in the lamplight, heard her voice saying leverage. Kale knocked once before stepping into the room, already dressed for travel. Black leather armor fitted close, a dark cloak thrown over his shoulders. His sword hung at his hip, the hilt worn but polished from years of use. You're up, he said. Couldn't sleep. He glanced at my son, who was curled in the blankets, still breathing in the slow rhythm of deep sleep. We'll move him carefully, Kale said. It's a long ride to the outpost, and I don't want him waking in the cold. I frowned. We're taking him? I told you. You don't leave my sight. That means neither of you. I hesitated, but arguing now would waste time, and there was a part of me that didn't want to stay behind. Not after last night. By the time we reached the stables, the fortress was stirring. Warriors moved in small groups, some returning from night patrol, others already preparing for the day's training. Eyes followed us, some openly, some from the corners of shadowed halls. 2 horses waited, both large, both restless in the cool morning air. Kale took the reins of the black stallion, then offered a hand to help me mount the chestnut beside it. I ignored the hand and swung up myself, settling my son in the wrap across my chest. Kale's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but he said nothing. The gates creaked open, and we rode out into the frost-tipped forest. The air was sharp, our breath steaming in the pale light. We didn't speak for the first mile, the silence filled by the steady rhythm of hooves and the distant caw of crows. Finally, I asked, why the outpost? Because that's where the northern attackers came from, Kale said. And because I need to know if Celine's right, that this was just the first strike. And if it was, then we find out who's backing them, and we take the head before they take ours. His voice was calm, but the steel beneath it was clear. We reached the river by midday, the sun weak through the overcast sky. Kale called for a stop, dismounting to let the horses drink. I slid down more carefully, mindful of the extra weight against my chest. You ride well, he said, watching me. I had to learn fast, I replied. Rogues don't exactly travel by carriage. Something in his expression shifted at that, a flicker of regret quickly masked. You shouldn't have had to. You made sure I did, I said, sharper than I meant. He looked away, his jaw tightening. I made mistakes, but I'm not making them again. The words hung between us, heavier than the chill air. We rode on. By late afternoon, the forest thinned, and the outpost came into view, a ring of low walls around a cluster of stone buildings, smoke curling from the chimneys. It looked quiet, too quiet. Kale slowed his horse. Something's wrong. I felt it too. The air carried no sound of movement, no voices, no clang of steel from the training yard, just the wind through the empty watchtowers. We dismounted at the gates. Kale pushed one open, the hinge groaning. Inside, the courtyard was deserted. A pot hung over the fire pit, the stew inside burned to a black crust. He moved ahead, scanning every shadow, every doorway. I followed, my son stirring restlessly against me. The first body was in the main hall. A warrior, throat torn out, eyes wide and glassy. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to keep moving. Room by room we found more. All dead. No sign of a struggle beyond the fatal blows. No overturned furniture. No barricades. This wasn't an attack, I said. It was an execution. Kale nodded grimly. And they left them where they fell so we'd see it. Why? To send a message. He crouched beside one of the bodies, pulling a strip of cloth from the man's hand. It was dark with dried blood, but the symbol stitched into it was clear. 2 interlocked circles. One black, one red. I didn't recognize it, but the way Kale's eyes narrowed told me he did. Who? I asked. The Iron Fang, he said. The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it low, tight, told me enough. They're supposed to be gone, he added. Wiped out a decade ago. Apparently not, I said. Before he could answer, a horn sounded in the distance. 3 short blasts, then silence. Kale's head snapped toward the northern ridge. They're here, he said.